Imagine two people describing the same night out. One swears they were irresistible, the other insists they were unbearable. The truth? Probably somewhere in between. Now crank that up to the max, throw in class tensions, obsessive mothers, broken marriages, and a butcher shop, and you've got the girlfriend. But here's the thing, it doesn't actually matter who's right, because what this show really exposes is how easily we misread intentions, jump to conclusions, and stick people in convenient boxes. The psycho ex, the gold digger, the overprotective mum, the mother-in-law from hell. From the start, the show sets up a battle of perspectives. Laura, the supposedly sophisticated art world queen, versus Cherry, the working-class butcher's daughter. Both clawing for Daniel's attention, desperate to prove the other is lying. The whole show runs on perspective, every scene is a retelling, every truth is slippery. So let's break down Laura and Cherry and ask, who's the real psycho in the girlfriend? Cherry is rooted in class tension, yet she can blend in at the butcher shop one minute to the world of prime real estate the next. Is that manipulation, or just survival in a world that punishes working-class ambition? Even her accent is a mystery. She speaks the Queen's English, while her mum still has a thick northern accent. Was it just because Cherry was raised in London? Because that accent isn't Cockney. Or did she learn to speak like this to blend in with the privately educated crowd? Cherry's mum is obsessed with the class divide. She won't engage with Daniel's family, won't attend the engagement party. Her view? People should stay in their lane. But Cherry doesn't agree, and that's what makes her dangerous in Laura's eyes. Cherry's mum constantly says to Cherry, they don't know who you are. What does she mean by that? Does it mean they don't know how unhinged you really are? Or, quite simply, that they will never understand you, as they will have never lived the same experiences and challenges that Cherry and her mum have. They will have never lived their life. Then of course we have Laura, who wants for nothing. She has the gallery, the fancy properties, the money, the dream marriage, and she can give Daniel everything he asks for. And all of this makes her presume this is why Cherry is with him. So let's break it down. Cherry buys nice things, she enjoys the lifestyle. So Laura jumps straight to, she's using Daniel for her money. But let's look closer. Cherry works hard, she's good at her job, she gets passed up for promotions because mummy and daddy don't have the same level of connections as Pandora, who literally gets everything handed to her. But Cherry never lashes out at Pandora or her boss, even though, honestly, they were both due a little dose of cherry-flavoured revenge. And she's not afraid to get her hands dirty. She rolls up her sleeve and butchers meat when needed. Of course, that role is picked deliberately to make us think differently about the elegant Cherry, with the role being framed as brutal and unfeminine. But she is just doing her job. She speaks fluent Spanish and claims she developed this skill working summers in the Canaries selling timesheets. Could be a lie, but you don't get that level of fluency from GCSE Spanish in a state school England. And if she was a gold digger, she could have landed a sugar daddy. She's got the looks, the charm, the connections, but she didn't. Yes, even her ex was wealthy, but we'll get to him later. She talks about wanting to work on affordable housing projects. Was that a PR move? Maybe. She didn't make use of that connection from Daniel's dad until she was really desperate. Is it because she didn't actually care that much? Or because she wanted to do it on her own? Maybe she really does care about the communities that she came from. So why is Cherry immediately pegged as a gold digger? Because society loves that narrative. And Laura, she needed an excuse to hate Cherry, and this one fits perfectly. Laura's backstory is a mystery. She lives in a wealthy household and seems career-driven, but that's not quite accurate. We initially see her as successful, but of course, she would be better if it wasn't for that assistant. I mean, she only appointed her because she was friends with Brigitte, not for her own merit, so no one's seen that coming. Laura does go on to fire her assistant, but obviously you can't just fire people like that in England. There is a thing called the Employment Rights Act, Laura. But this, of course, is also Cherry's fault, and a running theme is that we never see any accountability from Laura, as she's clearly is not someone that's used to feeling consequences for her actions. Later, we also discover that it is also Laura's performance that's an issue at the gallery, and her husband has been keeping it afloat for many years. Is this love, or is this actually just control? He prides their marriage on honesty and eventually leaves her for not being honest. Don't get me wrong, he had a point. Then it turns out he's been lying to her all along. At first glance, their marriage seems wonderful, but it's this and the other elements that make you realise it's not quite what it seems. They do have an open marriage, and that seems to be working for them. But when Laura says she wants their marriage to become monogamous again, he seems delighted, saying, you know, that's what I've always wanted. But no one is forcing him to go to the ballet with Marianne. Just don't sleep with other people, it's not that hard. Regardless, it took Laura about 48 hours after this conversation to go back to Lilith, which doesn't exactly help a marriage. But yet again, this is Cherry's fault. Laura is framed as the overprotective mother, but let's be honest, her relationship with Daniel isn't just clingy, it's borderline creepy. The pool scene, the gap years together, fussing over his scraped knee. And then there is, of course, that scene where she's about to be intimate with her husband, but then she sees that naughty pic from Daniel. Yeah, that was a scene that didn't need to be in my head. But obviously the writers felt they needed to make it clear that she didn't see him in that way. Thanks, writers. Even her friends and husband think their relationship is a bit much. Laura doesn't just want to protect her son, she wants to curate his entire existence, right down to his fiancée. And she wanted to hate Cherry before she even met her. Cherry's initial lies about school do start planting the seeds of doubt, but Laura waters them until they're in full-blown conspiracy orchard. Now, in fairness to Laura, Daniel does feed into this creepy dynamic. He is a grown man. He could have said no to her at times. Even when Laura does unspeakable things, he defends her, like telling his girlfriend that he died. But let's go back a little, because in Spain, things start to look a bit bumpy, but after that pretend drowning incident, things started to look up. Laura and Cherry were bonding. But when it really mattered the most, Cherry couldn't help help herself. She lied about not being able to swim, and more importantly, her ex. I think you could justify both her lies by trying to make a bonding experience with Laura and then not wanting to ruin it with being honest about her ex and panicked. But an important detail to know is Laura felt betrayed when she discovered those lies. But she did also lie at this moment. She acts like she's confiding in Cherry about Lilith, like it's this special secret between them. But she knew that her husband knew about Lilith all along. Laura might have just been making an effort here to bond with Cherry by looking like she was sharing some secrets. Alternatively, it was just a test to see what Cherry did with this information. But of course, Cherry lying about the ex is what really made Laura spiral. But even the situation here is a little murky. From what we see, Cherry is dodging her ex, not stalking him. Of course, this account might not be accurate, but from everything we see, it does really seem like she's moved on. But when Laura meets the ex and his new bride, they spin a tale that confirms Laura's worst fears. Cherry is a dangerous psycho ex, and Laura eats it up. But if she actually paid attention and tried to see it from Cherry's side as well, she might have realised that there were holes in the ex's account, and he was looking very, very shifty and clearly was not being honest himself. The new wife is, oh, my poor husband, she was just so obsessed with him. She wouldn't let him move on. Okay, love, did Cherry really show up at your flat? Or did he just tell you that when he was still seeing her behind your back? Did he just jump to the conclusion that Cherry was stalking him because he was so self-involved that he thought if she was at the gym, it must be to see him? Of course, when Cherry hears about this account, she takes some pretty iconic revenge, albeit maybe again a little step too far. That wedding cake sabotage? You don't whip it up that last minute. It was planned, it was petty, it was perfect. But how did she manage to get those organs into that wedding cake and keep it looking perfect the morning of the wedding? Had she actually been planning it for a long time? Or is it just slightly dodgy writing? Anyway, let's be real. The ex is still alive, so Cherry can't be that dangerous, can she? After Daniel's accident, Laura spirals. She thinks he's dying and tells Cherry that he has. That moment is meant to look understandable. She just wants to have those final moments alone with him. But then she doesn't correct it. She lets the lie fester. She then panics and tries to undo it, but then, of course, changes her mind again from jumping to conclusions. And this is where the protective mother mask slips. She watches her son break under the weight of the lie she created. And when the truth comes out, she still doesn't tell her husband. She doesn't see what she's done wrong. She blames Cherry. Again. Laura makes mistake after mistake, but she never takes any accountability. Laura's obsession with Cherry isn't just maternal, it's territorial. She sees Cherry's ambition as a threat, her charm as deception. Her friends tried to ground her, but Laura's too far gone. She's so focused on trying to unmask Cherry, she can't see anything else. When Cherry, yet again, takes revenge way too far by sabotaging the gallery, Laura can't even see the devastation on Lilith that all of her work has been destroyed. She can't just buy it all back again. Laura's crusade has sabotaged her. But Laura's response is almost relief that she has now caught Cherry. This is completely unhinged. But to be fair to Laura, she must feel like she's going mad. No one is listening to her. Can you imagine what that would feel like? She isn't completely wrong about Cherry, but it's a reaction that's off. And it plays straight into Cherry's hands, as we see by Cherry smirking in the police station. I mean, Cherry did also do this in response to Laura getting her fired, so it wasn't exactly unwarranted. What's your thoughts here? Did Cherry vandalise the gallery in a response to Laura trying to sabotage her life, not just Daniel but also her career? Or was it just a response to Daniel not telling his friends the truth? That Laura had told Cherry Daniel had died. Cherry was desperate to be accepted into that circle. And this account did not look favourably on Cherry. And then, of course, Laura goes on to get Cherry arrested at her son's engagement party. If this was just about protecting Daniel, then why do this? Again, no remorse, just a conviction that she's done the right thing. It's no longer about protecting Daniel, it's being the hero of the story, trying to unmask Cherry, becoming right. But at what cost? There are worse things than being wrong, which leads us to the final showdown. At first, you start to think that Laura might actually be doing the smart thing and trying to let Daniel go here, making sure he knows that she will always be there if he decides to come home. But no, instead, she literally drugs her son so he'll finally hear the truth and locks Cherry in a room. That is a new parenting low, and at some point, you stop being protective and start being, well, completely unhinged. Things escalate, she ends up drowned. Daniel cradles her in the pool, seem to love cradling each other in a pool. Cherry had hesitated to stop in, Daniel was just flapping around like a confused duck. I'm guessing his mum purchased his place in medical school, because this terrible A&E doctor doesn't even know CPR. Then a year later, plot twist, Daniel hears that final bit of evidence and Cherry's the villain all along. Sure, and I'm the Queen of England. And if you want to hear why I think that's a load of rubbish, and why that piece of evidence actually gives us insight into who the real villain of the story is, I'll link my breakdown below. But at this point, they're so obsessed with winning, they destroy each other. But what if being right isn't the point? The irony, Laura and Cherry are two sides of the same coin. Both lie, both manipulate, both want Daniel as their trophy. Daniel even says, "You remind me of my mum." Gross. But, also, not wrong. Both women project their insecurities onto each other. Both destroy themselves trying to win. And Daniel, honestly, I think the poetic thing would have been for him to die in that pool. Everyone asks, who's the psycho, who's the villain? Maybe it's neither. Maybe it's both. Maybe it's Cherry's mum. Or maybe it's us for needing a villain at all. Because the girlfriend isn't really about a gold digger or a mother-in-law from hell. It's about how we project our biases onto other people. Slap on the nearest trope and call it truth. Real people, they're messy, complicated, sometimes they lie to survive. Sometimes they love too hard, and sometimes they jump to the worst conclusion possible, because it's easier than thinking. So maybe the real question isn't who's the psycho, it's why are we so desperate to find one? And if you really want to know who I think the villain is, click here, and I'll see you next time.